Hello, welcome to On Trail. Thanks very much for joining us. Today, we catch up with Molly Hurford. She tells us everything about her publishing company, her podcast, her book series, and the big weekend she's got coming up, which, of course, you'll find on the On Trail calendar. Check out the video. I know you're going to love it. Would like to thank Molly Hurford for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're into a whole bunch of media related things, but which we'll get to in a bit. But first of all, what inspired you to focus on sports and adventure riding and things like that?
It is a very ironic thing for me to be focusing on because as a kid, or I guess maybe it actually makes perfect sense. As a kid, I was the least athletic kid in the world. I always tell stories about, when you have to run the mile or kilometer, as it might be in Canada, in gym class. I was the kid who would, pretend to faint to avoid doing it. Like, I have cramps. Oh, like honestly, like very dramatic looking back. I'm like, couldn't I have just walked it? Um, Yeah, least sporty kid. I once sobbed hysterically until, like, the T-ball coach had to call my mother to come pick me up and was just like, "This isn't working out." That said, my dad was very much into cycling. He'd done triathlon, like, back in the '80s when it was still, super cool and this kind of weird niche sport, and, he really kind of instilled, I guess, like he always made sure I had a bike is really, like, the key here. I didn't ride it much, but there was always a bike that I could ride available. So when I finally got to college, which is much longer ago than I would like to admit at this point, but when I got to college, I, started using the bike to get around because it was the fastest way to get from campus to campus. And then I realized that a lot of the, punk kids like myself were actually very much into the fixed gear bike scene. So I got into the fixed gear bike scene and it evolved dramatically from there to where then I was doing triathlon and doing, all kinds of different cycling. I found cyclocross, eventually found mountain biking, just fell in love with it as a sport because it was where the weird kids went, to be totally honest. And I realized, oh, there is a place for me in sport, and by extension, there's a place for everyone in sport. And I always knew I was going to be a writer. That was never a question. That was just 100% the way the world was going to go for me. So, initially I was gonna be a fashion journalist, as, many a
Oh,
young woman decides they're gonna be. But very quickly I was like, "Ooh, I wanna write about bikes because this is what I love doing. This is what I'm spending time doing." And frankly, all of the spandex really kind of wreaked havoc on the fashion journalism side of things. Um, so I became a cycling journalist, and from there, realized I wanted to help other young girls find these sports, maybe even a little earlier. Because, you and I both know, like, when you learn how to ride a bike and like learn how to mountain bike when you're younger, you
mm,
bounce, as
sure.
it turns out, when you
Yeah.
crash. Versus trying to learn it as a late onset sporty person. So yeah, my big goal kind of became how can I use what I know about journalism and writing and all that to, write these stories that might help some young people find this joy in sport a little bit earlier. And it's not that it has to be a competitive thing. They don't have to be signing up for every race or doing all this, just finding some way to have fun outside playing.
The next question was going to be what motivated you to establish Strong Girl Publishing, but it seems like a natural progression.
Yeah, somewhat natural, I guess. Yeah, really. So it started with, I had the Shred Girls books. At the same time, my agent was pitching a book I had on running to a bunch of publishers, and they were saying, "Oh, girls in sport just don't sell,"
Mm,
uh, which I found infuriating on many, many levels. Number one being, I think they were wrong, and at the same time, I was hearing from actually a bunch of young cyclists who I'd worked with on camps and at clinics and all that kind of stuff. They had book ideas.
mm,
They had these books they wanted to put together. They had these big dreams, and they were asking me for advice. And I was like, "Oh no, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know where to
right.
send them." And all of this is kind of like ruminating in my head on one too many long runs, probably, to the point where I'm like, wait a second, I can do this. I can actually bridge this gap. I can create this company that is, saying that girls in sport are a very valid reading group. And I do believe these sell. So Strong Girl Publishing was born, yeah, two years ago. Although the Shred Girls book started back in 2018,
Okay,
but they kind of came under the Strong Girl Publishing
gotcha.
label, I guess,
Okay.
to go back to my yeah, punk rock days here. And I mean, I'd been doing zines back when I was 17, and you were photocopying them and mailing
Right.
them. I was doing, working with magazines that were small enough that I was helping with the layout, so I was understanding how to
Wow.
layout of that. So then I knew how to self-publish. I'd been traditionally published, so I knew how that system worked. So I could kind of take all of these learnings from all of these different little places and kind of pull it together into yeah, this one-stop shop for girls in sport. And it's working.
Good.
It's slow, but it's working.
How did the Strong Girl Talk podcast come about?
Yeah, so the Strong Girl Talk podcast is my most recent podcast, although I've run or co-run the Consummate Athlete podcast for 10 years with my husband,
Wow.
Peter Glassford. And the Strong Girl Talk podcast, I started with my good friend and researcher, Dr. Sasha Golish. And it was really because she and I couldn't shut up about talking about all of these, stuff that's going on in women's sport and women's research and the research around girls in sport and all of this. So
Mm.
we kind of were like, we could start a podcast that really explores the intersection of women and girls sport culture and research. So it's the nerdiest thing in the world. We have so much fun doing it.
I love it.
And yeah, every week it's just us talking either to each other or to an expert, just really jamming on whether it's, what we see coming in women's cycling. We had Kate Varano of Zwift, who, helped really was instrumental in putting together the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift,
Mm.
talking about, how she's seeing the trajectory of, development in women's sport and, girls sport, and how that really, how the Tour de France Femmes plays a key role in that.
Sure.
Or, we're talking to researchers who are really doing the nitty-gritty work of like, where are we at with girls' body image and how it's
Mhm.
affected by sport? And there's pros and cons to that. And let's really, dig into what we know and what we need to change and what we need to work on. And where parents and coaches can, work on these things. So it has been such a blast to do.
The experiences you had growing up, working on zines and stuff like that, it, as far as I know, doesn't exist today and wouldn't exist today. Everybody would just be online or whatever. So it's almost like your own personal experience has to be updated for, a new generation, right? So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs starting out now?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a fifth grade class about this last year, and I was saying, the stuff that used to take us days and days to do, and, would involve us like stealing, your mom's VHS video camera to record stuff with your friends. And then if you weren't a video editor, you'd have to, very quickly like be hitting stop and rewind to like dub over stuff because you
Right.
couldn't actually cut the film.
Right.
Now you can do all of that on your smartphone in like
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think it's, the unlock we have on our ability to be creative and to put stuff out in the world. We've never been able to do stuff this fast. So I think it's both a terrifying time for entrepreneurs and also a really awesome time for them
Sure.
because they can really put out a minimum viable product so much easier than we could have, 20 years ago. Like I can design a t-shirt and have it up online in, 10 minutes. Now, is it going to be a great t-shirt? Probably not if I just took 10 minutes doing it. Uh, but I can do it. So I think the biggest thing I would say for starting entrepreneurs is to just start. I think everyone gets so in the weeds with like, "Oh, I need to have like a website designer do this and I need to trademark this before I could possibly
Mhm.
start doing this and I
Right,
need to do
right, right.
this." Figure it out is really like where I like doing it. My other thing is like be in all of the aspects, which is like
Ah,
bad advice when you own a bigger company and you're
right, right.
growing your company. But I think when you have an idea, I think it does behoove you to do all of the things.
Yeah.
Know how to work a WordPress and a website and,
Yeah.
understand what you want out of your social media and how your community is responding to it before you
Yeah.
hire a social media team to
Yeah.
do it.
The books focus on discovering confidence through cycling. Why do you think it's important to tell the stories in that way?
I mean, other than the fact that I think bikes are the best vehicle for literally everything, um, I mean, so when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the Babysitters Club books.
Mm.
And, it's not that babysitting is interesting. But it's such a great model for, like, telling stories about growing up, about friendship, about all of these things that, young girls deal with, but using this, lens of babysitting to tell these stories. Like, there's
Right,
always
right.
this kind of babysitting narrative going on in the background, but really the books are about friendship at the heart of them. And that's sort of how I feel like the Shred Girls are is, bikes are the vehicle, and they're an way cooler vehicle than babysitting, like, let's be clear. And I love that I get to sneak in little tips and tricks, and my favorite thing about when someone has read the Shred Girls is, like, I've had so many dads come up to me and be like, "My daughter read the Shred Girls, and then she kept critiquing me on how I'm doing my jumps or how I'm, like, cornering now,"
I love
because,
it.
like, in the book, there's, like, a tip or something, like, "Oh,
Yeah,
no, your outside foot needs to be."
right.
So it's been very funny with that, but the real stories are about the growing up and the discovery and kind of figuring out who they are as people, and I mean, I think the cool thing about bikes is, like, the huge breadth of, like, personalities that can come into cycling.
Yeah.
You can have and that's why the Shred Girls are like, they're 3 very different girls, and actually in book 4, there's now some new girls that come in. I love that they get to have the very different personalities. You can be this hard-charging super athlete, like, type A student that needs to, like, get everything right and, be really focused on winning the race. You can be kind of this more just like rough and tumble kid that just like loves playing in the woods and is just into all of like these outdoor things. You can be super nerdy and be really into, comic books and like weird stuff. And you're still going to find a group of cyclists that are into that. So I think, bikes are just the best sport for like anyone can find their weird little niche in it. So that's why I really like pushing girls towards it
Yeah.
because everybody's welcome.
Do you find that you end up incorporating, some sort of insider knowledge of your local trails? Like, does 3 Stage sort of make it into the books?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, well, the first book, Lindsay's Joyride,
Of course, yeah.
spoiler alert, yeah, it's very much you'll see Joyride 150 in there, and Mark, the guy who owns Joyride, has been such a fun, like, person to, have help me promote that book. We did our original launch of Lindsay's Joyride at Joyride, and
Oh,
we had,
fantastic.
like, almost 100 little girls just ripping around there on bikes and eating pizza, and the hilarious part with that is, like, the little boys that were there that normally, like, wouldn't pay any attention to the girls that were riding suddenly
Yeah.
realized, like, "Wait, the girls have pizza?" Because suddenly the boys are, like, all hanging out with the girls, like, you saw all these friendships forming, it was so cool. Book 2, Allie's Rocky Ride, yeah, I think if you read it, you would definitely see shades of 3 Stage in there, and I mean, even Blue Mountain before it closed
Mm,
to downhill mountain biking, because that
right, right.
one's downhill and cross country focused. Jen's Bumpy Rides bike packing, and that one could really be anywhere. I'd say, like, BT 700 inspired for sure,
Yeah.
also inspired by a embarrassing moment I had on a press trip on a
Oh,
bike packing adventure in Arizona. It was me and mostly guys on this bike packing press trip. It was 3 days, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna show up, like, day 1 and, like, really make sure they know I'm, like, a real cyclist. Like, really, I can keep up with the guys, like, I've got this." Didn't realize bike packing, your bike is super weighted in the back,
yeah.
right? We hit the first I don't e it wasn't a climb, it was like a little popper hill, like maybe like 5 meters at most, and I stand up and instantly wipe out. And then, of course, I'm trying to play it off, but, like, I'm on the ground, I'm
Hmm,
stuck under my bike because it's really heavy.
sure,
Um,
yeah.
get up, I'm like, I've ripped my shorts, I'm bleeding, and I'm
Oh,
trying so
no.
hard to be like, "I'm totally fine. This is" yeah, not blood, I don't know what this weird I must have, like, hit a gel, I don't know. Um So that definitely, plays into, yeah, that book. That happens to the character who, is most like me on that trip, we're gonna say.
Right.
And then book 4, you're gonna see little shades of Mansfield, Mansfield Outdoor Center in there because it is, the girls are at summer camp, although
Fantastic.
that one is, loosely inspired by, my Leadville experience last summer, which
Okay.
did not go according to plan, but
Uh-oh.
the best books come from the worst races.
If you could ride anywhere in the world with the girls from the books, where would you go?
Oh, man. That's a great question. I mean, there's so many great spots. I am so hard pressed to say. Part of me wants to say, Girona in Spain because that's like the cycling destination.
Mm.
It's such a cool spot. I think the Shred Girls could meet some really cool people there. I think back to, I met my husband Peter at a cyclocross, the first cyclocross race, first UCI cyclocross race in China,
Oh, wow.
uh, 12 years ago. So like part of me would want to rewrite that and kind of relive
Mhm.
that a little bit and the
Sure.
wildness that was that trip. Um, anything cyclocross really. I'm actually kind of shocked that the Shred Girls haven't done cyclocross yet. I put out my first young adult novel last year, Running as Fast as We Can, and it was about
Mm.
cross country running and high school students. And I'm kind of toying with the idea of doing a college years, like year one,
Mm.
where one of them actually does get on the cyclocross
You
team and
know.
gives up the cross country running.
Okay. I'm sure this comes through the books and on the podcast and everything, but what
Mhm.
advice would you give to kids, but young girls in particular, who want to get into cycling but might feel a little bit intimidated or nervous?
That is the question, right? Like that's
Or
why these books exist. That's why Strong Girl Publishing exists. Because it is really intimidating. It is really scary. To show up at your local club, whether it's all like if it's all adults, that's scary. If it's all boys, that's intimidating. I completely understand it. And honestly, the first best advice. So part of the reason the Shred Girls exist in general is I was doing an article for Bicycling Magazine where we were asking the question of what keeps girls cycling.
mm,
Because there were these 13-year-olds kind of in all different pockets of cycling that were crushing it. But we know that between 8 and 13, girls drop out at a rate of like, I think it's like 3 to 1 compared to
yeah,
boys. So what's keeping that girl in cycling? Because if we can then kind of like pull that out, we can maybe keep more girls in cycling if we can figure out what's making them
right.
stay in. So what kept them in is friends. What kept them in
Ah,
is other girls riding.
okay.
So if you're in an area where no other girls ride, your odds of continuing to ride are pretty low. Like,
Yeah.
sure, you might keep riding with your parents, but like, no offense to parents. I love you. I think whenever I see parents and kids riding, I'm so psyched. But like, frankly, there's an age where it's going to be really lame to ride with
Yeah.
you.
Right.
No offense. I had that phase. I remember it. I will still like forever like apologies to my dad who I like once like we used to go to West Virginia on hunting trips every year and I remember the year I was 11. I had like girlfriends that were like, "Oh, but I want to hang out this weekend." So I bailed on my dad because my like these girls that I wasn't even that close with, but they wanted to hang out with me.
Mm.
So there's an age where we're just little jerks. Like
Yep.
that's all there is to it. We don't want to ride with our parents. Period. Finding friends at that point is so crucial for keeping girls on bikes at that age. So I mean, I think the weird thing is if you're a young girl listening to this and you want to be in cycling, I think it's inviting your other girlfriends to go out and ride with you. And they might not be into it at first. Like they might think it's kind of a weird idea.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we sneak them in, right? We're like, "Oh, why don't we ride to get something, to
Yeah.
get somewhere?" Like that's the
Yeah.
beauty of bikes, right? It's not just fun to ride them. They're also practical transportation to get somewhere.
Right.
So it is a bit of like, well, could we ride to get ice cream? Could we ride to Sunset Point and go swimming? Really sneak it in. And then, it becomes kind of this like regular thing. And then
Yeah.
maybe it's like, hey, maybe we go to Collingwood Off-Road Cycling on Thursday and maybe we ride at the Trails at Highlands.
Yeah.
Gradually, kind of indoctrinate your friends into it.
Like any good cult.
I mean, tell me cycling isn't a cult. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like goofy outfits. We have these dorky
Yeah.
things on our heads. Like,
Yeah.
we're all
So
spending
it's all we want to talk about.
like, yeah, no one knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. Yeah.
disappear for hours at a time.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So with the big event we have coming up is the Shred Girls Celebration Weekend. Tell us everything we need to know about that.
yes, I am so excited. So we are launching Shred Girls Book 4, and I was thinking about what is like the most fun way we can launch a book that's about summer camp. And it was like, well, obviously, we hold a weekend of summer camp festivities. So Shred Girls, Lindsay and the Curse of Gemini Lakes comes out on May 27th. We are hosting the Shred Girls launch party the weekend right after that. So May 31st, June 1st at Mansfield Outdoor Center. You can stay over if you want. You can camp, but it's not a overnight camp situation. It's a families can come camp and hang out if they want. I'll be at
Right.
the fire pit making s'mores. Please join me. But Saturday we have a ton of fun activities. We're actually partnering with N89 because they're running a trail running race that day.
Oh,
So we're going to run a kids race just a like 1K loop. So we're adding in a
Fun.
little bit of multi-sport here. So we're going to have some kids running. We're going to do camp games. It's going to be really goofy and silly. And then we're going to have a on bike or no bike option if you're someone who doesn't have a bike, because
Mhm.
I wanted it to be open to anyone.
Sure.
So girls 7 or I wanted it to be open to all girls 7 to 13 years old. If you're 6 and a total shredder, or you're 14 and you're really into it, you're totally welcome. We're gonna do a big scavenger hunt around MOC for some ridiculously good prizes. Our friends, sponsors of our podcast, Payable and the Trek Store in Barrie, are helping bring a bunch of like really good bike prizes.
Wow.
So that is not to be missed. And of course, everyone gets their copy of the new book. Sunday, we're actually going to have one of my other Strong Girl Publishing authors, Vanessa Kuhlbeck. Her book, The Mirror Diaries, comes out in the fall. She's going to be there to run some really cool body image workshops. We're going to do
Wow,
more
great.
games. We're going to run another scavenger hunt. So really, just like an adventure packed weekend. It's going to be a complete blast. Everyone should come hang out.
You can't go wrong with Mansfield. They're super, inviting there, and they've really have a great vibe going there for sure.
That was also part of my hope, is just to introduce, girls and even families to MOC because it's such a cool spot. It's,
Yeah.
the cabins are really cool. They've got the little creek in the back. So if it's hot out, we can go hang out there.
Yeah.
And the trails are so well maintained,
Oh,
so
yeah.
well marked. It's such a inviting place.
Where can people find out more?
At stronggirlpublishing.com, we have a big banner on the front page now that has the link to the event. And of course, you can check out all of the Shred Girls books and all of our other books right there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for telling us all about it. I hope to see you there, and good luck with the rest of the books.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.